Our final guest this evening is the international trial lawyer Reiner Fuellmich, the man famous for exposing and suing corporations like Volkswagen and Deutsche Bank. In 2020, along with a network of lawyers and experts from across the world, he formed the Corona Investigative Committee and called for a global investigation into the COVID pandemic. The team filed complaints against governments worldwide, demanding a halt to the use of the PCR test and also advocating an international corona court to deal with crimes against humanity during the pandemic. Dr. Fuellmich, welcome to Right Now. You were on the show last year talking about the Corona Committee taking on governments and their actions, that they've done during the pandemic. Can you give us an update on what's happened since then?
Sure. Let me clarify one thing first. The Corona Committee, we set it up, my friend Viviana and myself, we set it up on not for the purpose of filing any lawsuits. But the idea was she and I and those who cooperate with us, one of them is our friend Dr. Wolfgang Wodak, who stopped the swine flu in 2009, we believed that we wouldn't get any answers from our government or from the mainstream media to the questions that we thought all of us wanted answers to. How dangerous is the virus? How reliable is the PCR test? And how much damage do the corona measures do? And we started interviewing experts from all over the world on that very day. And within 3 months or so, I suppose so many people had seen the people whom we had interviewed that many lawyers from all over the world got in touch with us and asked us to put them in touch with, for example, Professor Kemmerer. She's the first one who explained in great detail why a PCR test, no matter how you apply it, can never tell you anything about infections. We later spoke with Dr. Mike Yeadon, formerly of Pfizer, Professor Luc Montagnier, he's a Nobel Prize laureate from France, Dr. Robert Malone, who invented the mRNA technique, and many, many others, politicians in the meantime, members of the European Parliament. So what these lawyers wanted is to get connected with the experts so that they would be able to use them in the trials that they had been filing. Right. And of course, we helped them. One of the probably most important cases that was filed is one that took us months and months to prepare, and it was just very recently filed in the Constitutional Court in South Africa. Another case, or I filed a bunch of cases here in Germany, but ultimately we realized, or I guess I knew right from the start, that it wouldn't be enough to file cases here in Germany, because as I had found out over the last 27 years of my trial lawyer's work, the German courts are totally corrupt when it comes to dealing with globally important corporations like VW, like Deutsche Bank and others. So we realized right from the start that if there was going to be any success in the courts of law, it would have to be an international collaboration. And we would have to choose the venue in which we filed such cases very carefully. There are some jurisdictions which still function, India's, for example, probably the Constitutional Court in South Africa, and of course some places in the United States as well. But other than that, we also saw that we would probably have to move outside the system and form our own court of law, sort of like the Nuremberg trials, except the Nuremberg trials came after the war had ended and everybody agreed on the authority of that court. Now, we're still in the middle of this war. I do think we're making good progress, but the war has not ended. That's why it's, I wouldn't call this Nuremberg 2.0. I know many people did. Many people tried to make us say that this is going to be Nuremberg 2.0. Many people said that we're going to bring this case with 1,000 lawyers and 10,000 experts. That is just, they're trying to frame us, trying to shape expectations that they would then pretend that we're responsible for that. And if you can't fulfill these expectations, which they're responsible for, not us, they would be able to blame us for it. So what is really happening is, with a group of international lawyers from India, South Africa, the United States, Canada, Italy, France, etc., we're about to have a real lawsuit, except it's going to be a model lawsuit. Why is it a model lawsuit? Because we're doing this outside the system. Because we do believe that the current system, not just the judiciary, but also the economic system, the global economic system at that, education and healthcare, of course, is totally corrupt in most of our countries. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to set up new systems, a parallel society, so to speak, because I do think, and the people who we work with, the people who we cooperate with, we all believe that it makes not a whole lot of sense to try to fix this system. It makes much more sense to build up completely new systems, make this as attractive as possible, so that the 40%, they're not on the other side, but those 40% that are still approachable, that are still willing to listen, those 40% who are sitting on the fence and don't know which way to get off on, that they're going to be attracted to what we're doing. So that is the basis on which we agreed to enter into this judicial proceeding, which is a criminal proceeding. And we're going to start with our work on probably February the 4th or 5th. We're not quite certain. It depends on the judge, who is not available all of the time. But it's going to be real lawyers, a real judge, real expert witnesses, and real witnesses who will explain about the damages that they suffered, both economic damages because of the lockdowns, but of course also physical damages because of the so-called vaccinations. And we're using we're with one step in the old system, because as a procedural basis, we're using the American grand jury investigation. And as substantive law, we're going to use natural law, because that is precisely what they ended up doing in the Nuremberg trials, when they realized that they would have to come up with something against the defense that many of the war criminals had used. I was just following orders. So that's when they realized this is about human rights. And that's when they decided to use natural law, because this is what they said. They said everyone has a built-in compass, an innate ability to distinguish right from wrong and good from evil. So if you get an order to kill a 2-year-old, you know you can't do that. You must not do that. So that's why we're doing this. We have one foot still in the old system, using the grand jury investigation, and the other foot is already pointing in the direction of a new system. This is only the first step. We think we're going to get indictments against the defendants of this case, but the next step will be that we're trying to motivate, we're trying to get the whole picture. What we know from our interviews in the Corona Committee, we're trying to get the whole picture out. It's a little bit complicated. It plays out on three levels. First level is there really a pandemic? Turns out no, there's not a corona pandemic. There is a pandemic, but that's a PCR test pandemic. There's a virus out there, but it's no more dangerous than the flu. So automatically, once you arrive at this conclusion, the next question is, what is it about if it's not about health? And then you look at what the other side, or Mr. Global, as Catherine Austin Fitts calls them, have done over the decades, probably centuries, but we can trace this back to the last 3-4 decades, through their so-called financial industry. They've been looting and plundering our public coffers. This was mostly done from the platform of the World Economic Forum, through these so-called private-public partnerships, what we think is a complete misnomer. It was probably a hostile takeover of the public, or those representatives of the public who met on the occasion of this Davos meeting once a year, by the private corporations and the people who are pulling their strings. Those few, I don't know how many, 3,000 super rich families. So that is what they're using this corona pandemic to divert our attention from. because we should have seen what's going on during the swine flu. This is in 2009 and 10. We should have seen this because it coincides not accidentally with the Lehman crisis, the housing and then financial and world economic crisis.
Yeah.
We should have seen that they were blatantly lying to us, that our politicians weren't doing anything about it, just paying lip service. But instead of putting the people behind bars that belong there, they started printing money, which we as taxpayers have to pay back. Who's getting the money? The banks who had just stolen it.
Which is exactly what they've done this time.
Yes,
I mean, you were one of the
exactly.
first high-profile people to speak out. I know you've just said that obviously the war's not over, and absolutely it's not. But do you feel with the fact that now people, particularly following what you've been doing, are now starting to speak out more and more? Do you feel like the narrative is crumbling somewhat?
Absolutely. I think that's what is what all of us are trying to do, to bring out the truth. You're doing this, we're doing this. CHD, Bobby Kennedy's CHD is trying to do this. So many members of the alternative media are trying to do this. We have to get out the truth. We have to give people a chance to see the whole picture, which is no pandemic. They're trying to divert our attention from this financial fraud, huge, massive financial fraud. And the other thing they want to divert our attention from is that there are no side effects, or at least no unintended side effects, but the destruction of our economies and of our health is part of the plan. But it is important for people to understand this, and this is what we're trying to get out through this judicial proceeding. We're not going to start with the last level, which I just mentioned, because it's a little bit hard to swallow, but we cannot avoid this. We have to talk about this as well. Vera Sharaf, who's a Holocaust survivor, is going to help us bring out this very hard to swallow truth, but it's part of the picture. People must know it. And the idea is that we have to get people, I think this is some 20 years ago when Margaret Thatcher, who was totally unhappy with the European Union, when she said, "I want my money back." Well, now the people must say, "We want our sovereignty back," because that's what's being taken from us. And we have to, all of us, stand up and fight this fight, because this is about life and death. That's what
Absolutely.
You're right. More and more people are beginning to understand what this is about, and more people are willing to fight.
Absolutely. There's just been a huge legal action launched in the UK. Dr. Sam White, retired police officer Mark Sexton, and a team of lawyers have submitted thousands of pages of evidence to the police. They're accusing the government of a range of crimes during the pandemic, including conspiracy to commit murder, breaching the Nuremberg Code and the Human Rights Act, and treason. Are you involved in that? Because I think they asked you for help. Am I right in thinking that?
We have interviewed Dr. Sam White twice. The first time he was in trouble. They were trying to take away his license, I think. But then he won before the High Court, and he didn't leave it at that, but rather he turned around and said, "Now I'm going to go for you." And he started this criminal trial. We know about it, and I spoke to him about it, but we're not involved in this. So people who say that we're doing anything to help him, we would love to help him, but we're currently not involved in this. We're on his side, of course.
Okay. Do you think legal challenges like this work in some way? I mean, obviously we've spoken earlier about the fact that you're doing it, with one foot in a kind of a new sort of beginning, really, of looking at a new justice system, which I think I completely agree is absolutely a great shout. Do you think the police, though, if they go in and they hand these documents of evidence and stuff, do you think the police actually take them seriously, or they just file them away in the bin?
That's hard to tell. It depends on the venue. If you do that here in Germany, I know for a fact that even if you get a prosecutor to start investigations, he's going to either lose his job immediately, or it's the end of his career. You have heard about the two judges in Weimar who simply did their job, called for experts to help them in a case in which a mother had asked for help because her two children were being, this is what she said, tortured at school through the mask mandates, constant PCR testing. They couldn't sleep. They They were having all kinds of psychological problems. So one of the two judges called 3 experts who helped him understand what was going on, and ultimately decided in favor of the mother and against the school.
Fantastic.
3 weeks after this, he was searched and seized. His car, his home, his offices were searched, and his cell phone, his computer were seized. This was not a message that was meant to intimidate him, because they knew that he couldn't be intimidated, but it was meant to send a message to the rest of the judiciary, so that they would understand, if they followed the law, if they applied the law to these corona cases, they would either not have a career anymore or lose their jobs. And it is much worse with German prosecutors. German prosecutors are not independent at all. Even the European Court decided 2 or 3 years ago that German DAs, German prosecutors, can neither issue international arrest warrants nor enforce them, because there's always a very clear danger that this what they do is for political reasons. That Angela Merkel, for example, tries to intimidate her political adversaries, stuff like that. I don't know how bad it is in the UK. I know it's not that bad in the United States. I know that some of the attorney generals simply go forward with the job that they have to do, but it is seriously bad in Germany. I know in other countries, like in India, for example, which I mentioned earlier, the judiciary still functions very well. One of our colleagues who we cooperate with closely, Deepali Ojha is her name, she told us about a criminal case that was filed against Bill Gates and one of the Indian politicians, I believe, one of the members of their healthcare authorities, I think. But it's for mass murder. And if worse comes to worse, and they're taking this very seriously, he's going to face the death penalty. Wow.
In terms of kind of repercussions, so obviously you were talking about that lawyer earlier who helped the lady with her children. Has anything like that happened to you over the last 2 years? You know, some kind of repercussion for your stance and for speaking out?
Not really. We had one incident. I think this is on a Friday, when one of my secretaries told me, we just got a call. We don't know who it was, but they warned us if we come back on Monday to the office, we're all going to be blown up. Nothing happened. It was an anonymous caller. However, a few weeks later, I was in the middle of an interview with a guy from Switzerland. The police knocked on the door, 10 officers, very nice people, and they said they had received an anonymous warning that a bomb had been planted in my office someplace. And they asked me if I could move to a friend's place or to a relative's place, because they would have to search my office. So they did that with 2 dogs, found nothing. A lot of people were worried, oh my God, maybe they did it because they wanted to plant, or they wanted to plant bugs or something in there. I don't know. They're really nice people. In fact, 5 of these officers, I managed to talk to them. 5 of them you couldn't talk to, but 5 of them were quite interested in listening to what I had to tell them, and now they're following the sessions of the Corona Committee.
Oh, that's fantastic. The amount of times people wake up to stuff, if you just plant the odd seed here and there, you know, I think most people now realize that something's not right, and it's just about planting that seed, isn't it? But thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us, Reiner, and thanks for everything that you're doing to fight for our freedoms. Really appreciate it.
And thank you for what you're doing. I really appreciate that too.
We've got to get them vaccinated, and hopefully they will do it willingly.
So where is this coming from? People saying, I'm now being forced to be vaccinated?
Get vaccinated.